You're listening to Unguarded, where we talk about relationships and how to live an unguarded life. And we're your hosts, Beck and Joe Smith.
Here for another episode.
We
live
are.
in the flesh.
It's not live, but whatever.
It's live for us.
We're live.
Yeah, life is live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got an empty house. Kids are with Pop-Up and Grandma for spring break.
It's amazing.
And so just like trying to pump out as many eps as we can.
Yes, we can.
Right?
Yes,
For the people.
For the people.
And so one thing that's been really cool for us, just in our lives, right, is we've had so many friends recently in the last few months have gotten engaged.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Shout out Marcos and Jory.
Woo!
Right? Newest engagement. Very excited. Oh, I didn't even tell you this. Yeah, he called me last night and in the most unromantic way possible asked if I would be a groomsman.
Wow.
Yep.
Also, I love that you're announcing it on this pod.
Announcing it on the pod. Yes.
Hopefully it's official.
Live and in the flesh.
Actually, Jory told me.
Oh, so you knew before
I knew,
did.
but she's like, don't tell him. I'm like, oh my gosh, freaking Marcos, tell him now. But he took a few days.
I said I was a little disappointed. I wanted like skywriting. I wanted a personalized bow tie. I was like, I wanted you to go
do
to the
something.
nth degree. But
at least see you in the flesh and ask.
But in classic dude fashion, we talk on the phone more than anything.
That's true.
And so it felt right to just do it on the phone. We're very excited for them. They're getting engaged in August, and just been talking through that with them. Obviously David and Melissa got engaged. They're getting married in like the next month.
That's crazy. David, are you ready for this? He's definitely ready.
So ready.
He's been ready.
Been ready. And there's other people too, even soon to be engagements, it feels like, that are coming that
you think
don't
so?
want to talk about.
Oh.
But that even space about being engaged is interesting, right? It's that you're committing to someone, you're in a relationship, and then you commit to them at another level. And then it's like this waiting period.
Yeah.
Where, it's like kind of interesting that it's called engagement. Like you're in that season, that in between from dating to marriage is you have to choose like how you're going to engage.
Yeah. And to be engaged, like to
sure.
engage with
and
the other person, engage with life.
Yeah. And to set the like expectation of what marriage is going to look like. And so that's what I love with David and Melissa. They've talked about, openly and even earlier when we were just chatting, talking about a couple that they've invited into their life to give feedback, to have counseling, to prepare them for their marriage.
Shout out to Vanessa and Lyndon.
Yep, Vanessa and Lyndon Coleman.
Who
incredible.
Also have an amazing podcast.
Yep. But it's really cool that there's this like framework that in culture, maybe it's not normalized in every culture, but in the culture we're a part of here at Mosaic and in our friend group and community, we highly advise people having counseling.
Yeah.
Before they get married, and one of the reasons is we say this all the time. It's not that you won't get there, but what counseling does, it helps you get there quicker.
Yes.
And then the quicker you get there, you can enjoy life together. In a really unique space, and you get to really step into, again, we would have probably figured this out, or we would have had handlebars for how to navigate this conflict. When you bring in other perspectives, you open your life to other people. They're able to see things that maybe you couldn't see because you're so stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so, maybe we just take some time to talk about that. Like, what's the importance of feedback?
Yeah.
What's the importance of like inviting other people into your relationship, not just when you're engaged, but maybe even when you're dating?
I was about to say, like, we did pre-engagement counseling.
Pre-engagement counseling, we did.
Which I've never heard in my entire life.
Neither had I. Yep.
Okay. So I guess someone suggest it to you then?
Yeah, somebody at Mosaic. Yeah.
Said, "Oh, have you ever thought about this?"
It's something that like, hey, we think this is a great space for people. At the time, we had like a whole counseling ministry at Mosaic, and so we would offer pre-counseling classes to people pre-marriage classes to people. And then there was also like a wing of that was pre-engagement classes.
That's so cool. So the cool thing is like when you mentioned it to me, I was super excited because I'm like, ooh, that means we're on the right track.
Sure.
We're going to get engaged.
One track mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get engaged. But what I loved about it was the freedom and the safety to go to places and be really incredibly honest and vulnerable with this couple before we were engaged. So I felt like there was just like no real pressure, that we both had a complete way out. If we didn't want to proceed, it was okay because we weren't engaged yet. We weren't committed to each other.
Mm-hmm. And some of the times I think the language because people hear it, they're like, pre-engagement counseling, that seems weird. Take the language out.
Yeah.
The power of it is just, you making practical steps to identify whether there's the right compatibility.
Yes.
It's you deciding, do you want to move forward? Because a lot of times once you're engaged, what we've seen and found and experienced is people are less not aware, but they're less inclined to make certain decisions once you are engaged, because you're pot committed with. Sometimes financially, you're pot committed, and it's embarrassing to call off an engagement. And some red flags that you notice and see, you maybe call them yellow flags, or like it's a green flag in transition. You're less inclined to really go in or pause the brakes because of how committed you are.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So doing it ahead of that is actually really helpful because, there's less pressure.
And you're not talking about the wedding. I think that's the other thing. We're not you're not preparing for the wedding yet. So you really just have more time just to talk about the relationship. And we went to so many deep places, and we went, I feel like everyone that does therapy usually fights before or after, mostly before. I don't know, the tension's always high.
Sure.
And we would have little fights going in there. But they were great material, actually. Like you think, oh, this is a terrible thing, we're fighting. But it's the exact stuff that we needed to talk about with someone else. And I think there were so many things where I would maybe voice to you and you wouldn't really think it was a very big deal. But when I would bring it to this couple, she was much more like, no, I think we should talk about that. Let's park here. Let's debrief this.
Because she was your friend and had your back. Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
that's
I think girls have each other's back. And I appreciate that she had mine, and she helped me become strong. She helped me voice what I was really feeling beneath it. And that's when we came up with that. Well, she came up with that language. Is this a non-negotiable? And I loved that. Okay, when I brought something to you, which at the time, the one thing that I remember, that you had different friends that were girls. And I was like, hey, can we make this very clear of how you communicate with them or when you communicate with them? One of them was like a sister to you, a younger sister. So, that wasn't so bad. I was like, I get it. But it was good to at least talk about it and not feel like I'm just being jealous or something like that.
Yeah.
Which you could have seen it that way. But when it was in front of someone, it had more weight to it. And then she asked me, okay, is this non-negotiable? And I said, yes. And then you responded, okay, if you really feel that deeply, then I'm going to stop that because that part doesn't matter to me. If your feelings are more valuable to me than me connecting to certain people.
Yeah.
And that was great because I think that's the thing about it, is having someone else in the room with you, because we've now done it where we've been in the room with someone else and they're helping us, but we've also helped other people.
Sure.
And I'm like, we'll do anything. If someone's like, we need help in our relationship, we'll do anything to be in the room with them because we know the stakes get higher when someone else is witnessing the conversation between the two of you.
Yeah.
And can give some honest feedback of what we see, and we can help support someone in what they're trying to express when they may not have the words to express it.
So what do you do in the situation when there's a couple or an individual that is like, I want feedback I want to see what you see. I'm opening up my life to you. But then either you could feel it in the moment when you're talking to them, or their actions moving forward, they don't apply the counsel, the feedback.
I mean, we had a situation with someone who was married who was going through some of the toughest. But they were almost like they brought us in almost too late.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think if they had brought us or someone else into their relationship earlier, then they would have seen the red flags of what was really happening. And maybe the resentment would have been so, because I hear like one of the biggest things that happens in divorce is like when you resent someone.
Yeah.
So when you've resented someone so much, it's like irreparable. And so I think having someone, if you want your relationship to work, first of all, ask someone for feedback and say, hey, would you invest in us maybe 2 nights or 2 meetings? Would you have coffee with us? Would you come to our house? We'll make you dinner. And can you tell us what you see? And I think that's not I'm going to answer your question. Maybe I'll go back to this later.
I appreciate you.
Answering the question is, if you see someone and they're not taking on your feedback, which in this situation, it had been so far down the track, they found it hard to be completely honest, I think.
Yep.
And if you're not honest, you won't make it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, even if the honest thing is the hardest thing and it feels like it will end your relationship, it may be the only thing that saves your relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So go there. It's like we beg people because we can see it when they're holding back. And we're like, please, first of all, we won't think of you any less. We'll think of you more highly because you are willing to risk everything to say the truth, the dark truth that's holding your relationship back, that's holding you back. And we're only here to help guide you out of it.
Yeah. And like looping it back to even with talking about engagement, and even in that space, that interesting space of no longer dating but not yet married.
Yeah.
Is honesty is a huge component to
Yes.
and a huge factor to determining whether you're going to be in a great space going into marriage.
Yes.
Is because a lot of times in that engagement space is you're not fully honest.
Because you don't want to disrupt the boat.
You don't, 100%.
You don't want to upset her.
Yep.
She's having so much fun planning everything. I can, you were like, oh, I'll avoid this. We can talk about it later. That's probably the thinking.
But I think it's in the language of, yes, engagement is one thing. Like if you're listening and maybe you're engaged and you've been holding off on sharing honest thoughts. You've been, not being fully transparent because you're worried about what it could mean on the other side of it. You have to fully engage with the person emotionally. You have to fully engage with what you see and what bothers you, and be okay with if it doesn't work out, because you have to trust that person can take your authentic self. You have to trust that person can see you for who you really are and then want to accept you. Like that's the beauty of a committed relationship.
Yeah.
It's not even that they see the version of you that's waiting to emerge. That's incredible. The version of you that is unpolished, the potential of you. Hopefully in a relationship that comes to the surface. But you want to be with somebody that sees the authentic, full version of you and says, I choose you. Mm-hmm. Like I'm good with who you are because you've allowed me, and maybe only me, to see the true version of you. And that's the beauty of when you're in a healthy relationship. Is that you let somebody see all the faults and the wounds and the damage that you come with, and go, I don't only see that in you. I see you as a full package, and I choose all of it.
I mean, I think coming from broken relationships, and maybe the thinking, and we kind of mentioned to the last podcast or episode about that, yes, sometimes you lie or sometimes you withhold because you're just trying to like get through it, or you think your way, this way is going to be the best way. And you're kind of manipulating the situation. And maybe that what's tough about that is that the other person kind of knows you're manipulating it, but doesn't know how to pinpoint it. But all that to say, I remember struggling so hard when we had different therapies, pre-engagement, but also engagement. I remember this one night when we had this like big fight beforehand about wedding invitations.
Yep.
And then I was so mad, and I was like, great, I'm glad we have like this therapy session with our mentors. So I'm going to bring this up and like finally get this, like I'll be validated.
Yeah.
And then I bring it up, and then you share your part of it, and they look at me and they're like, yeah, Beck, I actually think this is your problem. And I remember being shocked, like someone had identified that there was this wound and blood was pouring out. Like it was so vulnerable. And also I'm like, what do you mean there's a wound there that's me?
Yeah.
How can this be me? Like I wanted to disengage from that thing that you said is my problem, my issue. I remember going to the bathroom and like trying to calm myself down, and then coming back. I'm sure I was crying, and you said, I'm so excited. I'm like, what do you mean you're freaking excited? There's nothing exciting about this, that I'm damaged and I do these weird manipulative things. And I'm sure you don't want to be with me knowing these things about me. These things that I didn't even know about myself that were wrong. And you were like, no, this is exciting because now we know this is the challenge or the dragon. We're going to slay the dragon together.
Yep.
This is not just on you. And this may be like your work that you have to do for yourself, but I'm also going to help you slay the dragon. And that was, first off, I'm like so surprising, because I thought for sure if you heard the things that are broken inside of me, you wouldn't want me anymore, because that's what I had heard for all my life, that if you share the things that make you weaker, someone's going to say you're not worth it anymore.
Yep.
And I only want the side that's strong. So I don't know what you were thinking in the moment. I mean, did anything cross your mind where you're like, actually, maybe she's more damaged than I thought, or she's more? No?
Never. No, because I don't look at people as damaged.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I don't look at people when they're damaged. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I never, it wasn't a scale of let me look at the health versus the damage, you know? We're all damaged. We're all wounded. We all have stuff. I had stuff, you know? So I was like, the same thing if I'm going to play that game, is she going to, choose me? And I feel like we got past that point when I committed to you. For me, it wasn't, and that's why I love that we had still conversations during when we were engaged, leading up to marriage as well. But for me, it was a done deal, because I take commitment very seriously.
Yes, you do.
And I said, this is what I want. This is what I'm committing to. And so now we're just preparing for it. So for me, engagement, isn't, let me figure out if I made the right choice. Engagement is, let us figure out how we can prepare ourselves to have the best marriage possible.
That's good.
And I think a lot of times people focus on the wrong things.
Yeah.
They focus on the wedding rather than focus on the marriage.
It's good.
The wedding is one day. It's beautiful. And I want people to have a beautiful wedding. I want people to celebrate and remember and have all the best photos and video and all the best memory, of course. But if we spend all of our energy on making the wedding the forefront, I think we have missed the intention of what our time should have been spent on. Because really, it's not about wedding planning. It should be about marriage planning.
Yeah,
it should be about life planning, and that's why counseling is so essential. What we believe. That's why, it's creating space for people to help you prepare for the craziest, wildest, most chaotic and beautiful adventure you're ever gonna have, and it's doing life with someone.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that the feedback that couple gave, which you probably were trying to help me see it, but I couldn't quite see it. Like,
Sure.
That's an interesting point, right? Because you, the whole argument was I was trying to force you to apologize for something that you said that you were like, I didn't do. So in my mind, you did do it.
Yeah.
So it's like you're telling me the kettle is black, and I'm telling no, it's white. So then we just are at a
Why is it gotta
standstill.
be black and then white?
I know. I don't know why. Could have said silver. But isn't that the same, calling the kettle black?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
Just it was a racial joke. Keep going. Yeah.
I got it. That I was so adamant that how I perceived it was right. And I think that's the tricky part, is that in life, we have certain brain patterns in the way that we've wired ourselves through, maybe it's through trauma, we've rewrite our brains to survive that trauma. And then we're now stuck with that type of brain. And so it's so hard when someone's trying to tell you, no, it's not black, it's white. And I'm like, it cannot be, because how I see it should be the truth, right? And so I think that's the interesting thing. Why is it that we're so convinced that how we see something is right? And I love how you always say, I'm okay with saying, and Erwin says this all the time too, like, I'll say something is right and I may be wrong, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay that I may get it wrong. And I feel like that's maybe the posture of being open for feedback, because you're really saying, I'm going to say this is right, but I'm always going to be open that I could be wrong. And if someone gives me feedback, I'll listen.
Yeah. Because I think, maybe, a filter for somebody listening, or a filter for all of us, but is going, okay, how do I receive? Is somebody whistling?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Somebody's having a good time here in Hollywood. Like, a good posture is how do I see it, the feedback, or
That's good.
do I see it and because that it is a validation of whether I'm right or wrong, or do I see it as an opportunity to grow, opportunity for more? Because I don't know, right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't have a huge desire to be right. It's just not like there's not endorphins that fly off or explode in my brain that like, oh, you were right. I don't know, it's just not how
you're wired.
I'm wired, not how I live my life.
I'm definitely wired like that a little bit.
Yeah,
anyway.
And that's just not me. Like, I don't have a desire to be right. I do have a desire to be more. And I have a desire to expand. I love when I realize I don't know something, or I had a misconception. And speaking of faiths, you have a lot of friends who don't believe in God, and huge aspect of Mosaic I love is that we're a community of people very intimate with Christ and following Jesus, and people who have never expressed that desire. And I love having conversation with friends who don't believe, and I love talking about just life, and having so often other friends who aren't in the faith, going like, well, what about this? Like, if this thing is true, all the indictments that come from it, like, what if you're wrong? And I just go, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. Then you know what happens if I'm wrong? What a beautiful moment where I become more, because my understanding of life has expanded. That something that I thought was true, or what I held to be true, new experiences or new truths have emerged that have shifted that perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, why would I see that as a negative?
Yeah, that's such a great point.
Where I'm now a more holistic human that has added texture to my life. I'm okay with being wrong. I don't need to be right. So even as a person of faith, I'm not a person of faith because there are things that I have to believe are true about X, Y, and Z. No, I'm a person of faith because I believe and I've experienced a God who's exploded my mind and has set my heart on fire and has brought color to everything that I touch. And there's not, my relationship with God isn't declarative. It's actually expansive. Like I've never arrived at a thought and I've retired from that conversation.
Yeah.
No, it's the opposite. It's like new dimensions are opened up, and and so even I don't know, we're shifting a little bit, but even the concept, like I was talking to somebody recently about hell.
Yeah.
And they're like, it just feels like, I can't believe that there's a place called hell. I can't believe you believe. And I'm like, see, I root my life in the scriptures. I believe the scriptures are God speaking to us. I'm like, so any belief or thought process I have, I don't need to defend it like it's mine.
Yeah, that's good.
And I go, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But my best understanding, I feel like that language helps too. My best understanding is this.
Yeah.
But I don't need to be right about this. I don't need to be right about hell. If at the end of the day there's no hell and we made this concept up, I'm not gonna, in eternity at the other end of like life here, be like, no, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm like,
yeah,
awesome, So any like issue that I think a lot of times when we have tension or there's conflict or it's hot button topics, I think it's because people like set their feet deeply and go, this is a core thing I believe in, and if it isn't true, now it violates everything about who I am as a human.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we need that perspective and posture. And I think when you have a posture of you want to grow, and you have a posture that you want to expand, then you'll take feedback, you'll take input, you'll open up your life to others because you don't need to be right.
Yeah, that's so good.
You just desperately need to be better.
Yeah. Dang, that's amazing. That's
Thanks.
so good. Yeah. That's so good. When you talk about being more, it feels like the opposite, or it feels like what humility maybe looks like. And when you're prideful, which I love that, the scriptures always talk about, like, get rid of pride because it actually stops you from growing. And when you're prideful, you think you know what's best.
Yeah.
Rather than maybe being excited by what could be the new alternative or a different pathway that I've never thought about before. Or how do I engage with my wife in a new way that I've never thought about before? Like, that's what I love about faith is that, and, Erwin always talks about, like, and you just mentioned about being expansive, that as you get to know God, he's expanding the way that you perceive the world. That what if the world isn't as black and white as we think it to be, and that this chair isn't solid, but it's just energy. So then when you start thinking about things in a new way, maybe that's what it is. It's like if we start expanding in our mind and reading more and questioning more and listening to new ideas and thoughts, then we will be less controlling about what we think reality is.
Yeah.
And then in that case, when you come into relationships, you're not so controlling about how you think the relationship should go.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you're like, oh, no, this is what a relationship should look like, and we're not that, then you get locked in and think, no, we have to be, you start forcing someone to be something that they're not. Rather than saying, hey, we're two individuals trying to build a life together, a marriage together, a family together. How do we want to do this? And how do we find a common ground? And what can I learn that you're really good at? And what am I really good at?
Yep.
Similar to kind of what we shared in the last episode, like having respect for the other person, that you're two separate individuals, but when you come together, you make magic.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like what I loved about you is that from the moment I met you, I felt like you knew who you were, that you had a strong core, but you're always open to change.
Yeah.
And I respected you for it. And I wanted to be more like you. And so I love that I'm always inspired by you. Every time you grow, I'm like, okay, now I want to grow. Or even just how you answered that question, I'm like, that's so insightful and so beautiful. And now I'm more in love with you because of how your brain works and how you see the world. So I wonder if we could approach relationships like that and go, I want to see more of how you see the world. And maybe that would give confidence to the other person.
Yeah.
Like
for sure.
as a woman, I think it's cool if when you say, I love the way you think, or tell me about that, or like maybe asking more questions.
Yeah. It's the endless goal of curiosity.
Yes.
Whereas, like I love the oceans. I love the oceans, and I love space, because they're like the two kind of most unexplored or limited explored. I can't talk right now. They've been explored the least.
Yeah.
We know a lot about land. We
Yeah.
know pretty much everything there is about land. The earth has been mapped. There is no part of the world.
I mean, how about what happens underneath the earth? Like, I mean, I know we've
Sure.
discovered, we have science about that, but who's to say there's not things more deeper within the earth that we don't know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right on cue. I don't know
Really?
if you heard, but there is a working theory, and scientists now believe that under the pyramids in Gaza, there was actually an entire world and a city underneath the pyramids. So they have this technology that they've been using to basically recreate a map under the pyramids. And they've found like these cylinders with staircases that go up, and they believe that there was water and a whole underground water system, and that there was a whole world underneath the pyramids.
That is so cool.
And when one day we are gonna discover whether that's true or not.
Yeah.
One day there's gonna be the ability, technological. And I
Also, why can't we do that now? Like,
it's like, things are deemed historical, and they don't want people messing with, artifacts and all. And maybe they already have, and we don't know yet.
Well, that's what. But also, why? I mean, I guess we build underground.
For sure.
But the way they did, I'm sure it was insane.
Yeah, and that there's so much, right? Atlantis as a lost city.
Yeah.
Like what could that have been? And there's so much more that we don't know. But my whole point being, that's the beauty. I love that we have barely
Scratch the surface.
scratched the surface on what in the world has happened historically on this planet. I love that we think we know all there is to know.
Yeah.
And we know so little, right? Because that's, I think, the beauty of life, is that there is no end point.
Yeah, that's good.
And the fact that the universe is ever expanding, that there is no limit to it, because that's reflective of what I believe is the beauty and nature of God, that He's ever expanding. Love should be ever expanding.
Yeah.
Like grace should be ever expanding. Forgiveness should be ever expanding. Right? We're the ones that seem to want to limit things that God intended to always expand and increase.
I love that. So maybe that's the same thing with relationships. That if we saw it as we're only scratching the surface,
It's great.
of our marriage and our love and our relationship, that then should excite us to be curious of how could we build our relationship? Like, what is the things that we haven't even comprehended yet? An idea hasn't even dropped into our brain about how we can relate to one another.
Yeah.
Because I've been on a kick of listening to so many podcasts about health, and I think it's super fascinating about like bone density and how you can live longer and live healthier having healthier bones. That it's not just like a framework that your muscles attach to,
Yeah.
but actually bones have like a messaging system that sends messages to your brain and to the rest of your body. So then there's to think about, okay, the ocean has this insane amount of stuff that we don't even understand it yet, and the space we haven't even begun yet. We don't even know. There's probably aliens, there's probably different life forces. And then same within our own body, if this is our universe inside of us, we're just scratching the surface. And we're every time a new podcasts or new scientists coming out with new thoughts about how do we become healthy, and the things that we thought were like this one girl, she was like, I wrote a book and it was all about sleep. And then I start researching sleep, and then I realized, actually, no, it's all about bone density, and it's all about workout, but certain workouts. And like, it's so exciting listening to all the things that we can learn about our body and how we can best prepare our bodies, right, for age. That when we're in our 60s or 70s, we don't have to be what we deem to be what a 70-year-old looks like. And that's exciting to me. Like reversing age. I love that. So I just wonder if we come with that same curiosity, like you said, to our relationships, then maybe there would be more fun and less like heaviness and like more joy.
Where joy is always great.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think the more curious you are, the more joyful you are.
Yeah.
Because it's that like pursuit of the new. I think that is one thing that can help a relationship thrive, whether you're dating, whether you're engaged, or whether you're married. The curiosity should never die.
And then the one quick thing is that I think we can get locked in that if we've been a certain way for so long, we can't reverse it. We cannot change who we are. And that's not true. That just in the same way we can reverse our age and our body and get healthier, it doesn't matter whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 60s, or 70s, you can still start doing the right thing and get your bone density up, which is amazing. It's not like, now your bones are brittle. What is it?
Brittle. Or fragile.
Brittle is what the word I was thinking of. Brittle, that you can't reverse it and you can't get strong because it's too late. No, it's never too late. So then the same way with relationships, even if we've started on the wrong foot and we've maybe not laid a good foundation for the relationship, there is always a way. If you're both willing to lay a good foundation, you can always do it and start afresh. It's just whether you're both going to engage with that new foundation. And recommit to one another and say, okay, this is risky, but I'm going to commit to you, and let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can create. Let's see what we can build.
That's great. That's a great place to end.
Yeah.
You want to sign us off?
No, you sign us off. I signed us in.
You start and you finish. Those are the rules.
No, it's not.
Yeah, same.
The whole rule was you're going to do it, and you didn't do it at the beginning. So
thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, if it was helpful or insightful in any way, share it, send it to a friend, send it to somebody who may be in a relationship that is looking for some tools, and then subscribe, sign up for the newsletter, go to our website, theunguardedpodcast.com, and give us your info, and then we'll let you know about all the things coming up. Merch coming soon.
Yes.
Live episodes coming soon. So all the things. We love you, and we'll see you next time on Unguarded.